Wound, pages 16 through 31 by Lucas Werner. The loudest noise is clicking, if anything. There are sometimes bells. This is a world that functions on voices carrying on and is otherwise, by and large, mute. Cars fly and don't even hum. The horse and carriage was phased out in centuries past. There's little clomping hooves. There's no whirring engines. Things are rather peaceful. Marseille in Clockpunk 1200 is no more dangerous than an encased wound-up spring. The night and day watch are not there to arrest anyone unless things go awry. You could say the only real threats at any given moment are arguments and theft, which are rare and helpless in both cases, ending in a quell before anyone is hauled to a neighborhood brig for a 2-hour detention for a first violation in a 24-hour period. Justice is swift, fair, and infrequently a debacle. Some are generous to where good, hot, free food is given away every day for no charge. Knowing the right places guarantees hunger is a scarce problem. Everything with power is either hand-cranked or animal-driven for show. Much of the equipment only takes a minute for a 12-hour charge, which isn't much when compared to gasoline, and all without a waste product or occupied space like with solar and wind power. There are no cords. There are no plugs. Airplanes to office buildings are powered by winding like with watches and clocks. The only way to tell it's the 13th century is the clothing, music, and entertainment. As the Mars ship Archimedes II, Un being the ship used for the moon, begins to launch, a 30-06 bullet custom fit for a 357 Magnum, men and women wipe tears of joy from their eyes. Back at home, a winder strolls or bikes through the neighborhood, or maybe even a few, to make sure each house gets a full wind every 12 hours to make sure their refrigerators, etc. are at nominal cranking. A red light on the home indicates a wind is needed. A green light indicates the charge is full beyond 6 hours. Each house needs a wind at least every half day. All this prevents outages. There is no power grid. Every home is self-sustaining with care from homeowners and neighborhood winders whose only job is to give a walkthrough twice a day. Again, winders often have a second job. Winding is not a highly paid profession, but is incredibly respected. The Mars-bound craft, Archimedes II, is now launched and streaming through the sky, where it will first dock with the space station Gear International and sprung directly at Mars in a 4-month propel towards the red planet. The ship has everything needed for the venture on board. In dimension, the ship looks exactly like a 30-06 rifle bullet and the launcher like a 357 Magnum. The launcher is a chamber exactly a mile long. The ship is pointed at the top and winder at the bottom. The ship itself is 2 football fields long, or 200 yards, which is smaller than a bullet compared to the gun. There is a mining operation on some of the asteroids in the asteroid belt for palladium because the current space program ostensibly relies upon titanium. The current projection is 15 to 20 years to send an unmanned warp vessel to set a series of rovers on the surface of Proxima b after a year-long journey 4.2 light-years away. The venture will break the light-speed barrier using antimatter, which is created by colliding photons together and containing the positrons with a quantum magnet repulsion charge. The sound of the Mars launch would be deafening without a silencer tip on the launcher. Even with the silencer, the squeak is as loud as the close-range whistling from a very big bottle rocket. The only thing to compare the thrust yipe to is a sexually aroused Costa Rican howler monkey multiplied by 20 in decibation, and only lasting a second like the aforementioned bottle rocket. Launch technicians call it the launch squeak. Everything, including the rocket, has a French chateau of look because, well, this is 800 years ago, despite the many technological advancements. to the level of 22nd century Earth in our timeline, it's still the 13th century. People are generally quaint, even though religion is as popular as atheism in early 21st century America and has a non-theist worldview. Women are often billionaires in clockpunk Europe, though tend to be shy and easily charmed by romance from extroverted men. Fast food is non-existent. There are no billboards. The food is rustic. The Night and Day Watch are their version of police and really have more in common with knights, though metal armor is less favored than leather external padding. There aren't guns. Many citizens carry knives and swords, as do the Watch. It's like walking into a Renaissance fair. There aren't a lot of bright lights other than the street lights that utilize a glass-covered orange flame fed oxygen from a pipe system and is made of wood instead of metal. Almost everything is made of wood and brick. The Mars ship is made of titanium to look distinctly 13th century French because it is 13th century French. There's a real local pride in everything. If the food isn't French, the people typically take the Mach 3 maglev train to that country to enjoy their local cuisine. You can tell just by looking at the train that it's French, even though it travels 2,283 miles an hour, from Marseille to all over France and every nation in Europe, with expansion plans to Asia and the Middle East. The internal veneer of the ship is by the most measure of a wood construction. In zero gravity accelerating, a ship only takes a push with a tightly wound spring. The rest is up to the lack of gravity in the vacuum of space. Packaged foods are the norm of spaceflight. Packaged foods exist nowhere else. This advanced though quaint life favors fine and rustic cuisine. The Stellarnauts are making quite the sacrifice. This is the last slow journey into space. Once the antimatter goes online in a predicted 2 years, humans will be inching towards a warp craft. The trouble is that the amount needed will take 20 years to produce, 15 if the funding is provided by a fast-track program, and monarchical curiosity is piqued enough to allot the tax collections to science. The hounding for research and development is a common zeal among royal lines, since the paparazzi puts them up for surveillance to the populace, whom can and do elect to terminate their services at any time given a highly likelihood, and the people generally appreciate nuanced progress in the favor of logic, reason, and knowledge, commonly reflected by monarchs afraid to lose their positions of prestige through video surveillance into their daily lives, to keep the wealthy in check to their subjects, and so much as a monarchy can sustain the will power to be equilateral and Socratic methodology, and to avoid a coup d'etat. Socrates has been a religion for 1,700 years. It's the most popular religion on the planet. It teaches logic, reason, and knowledge as the highest values. Socrates does not speak of any spirit or God. The religion itself is only followed by 10% of the population, though the monks maintain the entire public library system, and are highly respected across 4 continents for their meticulous attention to time. As the name suggests, the religion is a tribute to Socrates and has over the millennia progressed the culture through veneration, though not the worship of Socrates, and the ideals of Socratic reasoning as a means of viewing the world. The religion, and all religion, has fallen out of favor simply because the people are already well educated in school, and Socrates is thus redundant. Christianity and Islam never existed. Buddhism, Hinduism, and Judaism maintain a small following in the order of less than 1% each, and are largely dismissed as far too dogmatic to be considered. 2% of the population follows Brujeria, which means witch, most of whom live in Spain. 1% are Shinto, which surprisingly has a large following in Germania and has grown to have many shrines even in France, whose followers worship ancestors and use the Tao Te Ching for guidance, as the Shinto faith is a syncretism of Shintoism and Taoism. 90% of the planet is atheistic and live normal lives with a strong ethic towards kindness is an ethos to always strive to help those in need and to be happy, as life only gives you one shot to be loved and to follow one's dreams. Socrates teaches a similar message, but again, so do the schools, which makes a religion irrelevant. Marriages and funerals can be officiated by anyone, which are finalized by the government of the royal estate. The people can veto even the king and queen of France. Almost every nation follows this system because smartphones are all over the monarchy. They live in a directly democratic socialist royalty on a plutocracy. The monarchy replaces politicians, and the political system is completely beholden to the will of the people 24 hours a day. Their charter is built upon unalienable rights that cannot be changed. Murder is illegal, period. Rape illegal, period. Slavery is illegal, period. These are unamendable situations that cannot co-occur in a people's democracy. A subject has every right to remove a king. A king cannot execute a subject even for the crime of murder. The stiffest sentence is life imprisonment only for the crime of murder. The law applies to a king as much as a subject. Royalties serve in assembly for life unless the people vote them out. The royals serve as senators and the people serve as representatives. There are clearly more people than the royalty. The Queen of France was previously just a regular citizen. Princess Beatrix Amalia Camilla Montaigne, Her Royal Highness Queen of France, betrothed in marriage to King Reginald, etc., etc., was born simply Elizabeth Camilla. They're a newlywed couple for less than a year. The Queen is 19 and the King is 39. This is average for clockpunk 13th century France, ahead of the landing of humans on unpopulated Mars once the spring ship gets there in 4 months. The royal couple met at a neighborhood dance last summer where the royals and subjects go to mingle once a week, every Friday. They were married on the winter giving day of the winter solstice on December 21st of that same year. Even though she is a royal now, she's still in attendance at a local community college. She only gets referred to as Queen Beatrix during official matters. She still gets called Elizabeth Camilla in school. There's no "I'm a queen, I should get" shenanigery. The people can vote to make her ride the bus if they want. Beatrix often does take the local transit system and remain close to her friends. There's sort of a shunning of money in the royal cooperative, encompassing every nation on earth. There's much in the way of mixed ideals. Most of the royals actually do transit while living in very large castle-esque skyscrapers. The king's castle stretches 5 miles into the air. It's the tallest building in the cooperative. The Marquis of Marseille lives in a 5-mile-high building as well, which is also the tallest building. I should rephrase that. All the buildings for the royalty are 5 miles tall. Marseille is the scientific center. I'm going to do a quick edit. Marseille is the scientific center of Earth. Many times royals will live in the same building for life. The king and queen live in Paris. The Marquis of Marseille holds a doctorate in temporal physics. His primary specialization is in faster-than-light time displacement. He commissions the primary chair in physics of the University of Marseille. He's kind of like Elon Musk meets Stephen Hawking. France is further divided into principalities from the principalities of North, South, East, West, and Central France, which are further divided into duchies, counties, municipalities, or cities, and baronies, which are boroughs. 4 of the principalities are run by the king's siblings and step-siblings, and 1 principality is run by the oldest cousin. Incest is strictly forbidden and has been for centuries. The royals together are called the House of Royal Senators. This is often shortened to the House. The people together are called the representative subject populace. This is often shortened to the representation or the subjects. Royals often call the people by the term representative, and people often call the royals by the term senator. The subjects and royals often dress in the same manner of clothing by the mercantile class, middle class of 13th century France. The castles almost always serve as hotels. They also serve as televised assembly halls for government work. The people and the royals together are called the Cooperative Assembly or just the Assembly. The Castle Marquis of Marseille is pretty much the only tall building in Marseille. In comparison to everything else in the castle is 5 miles into the air, while the next tallest building is around the Archimedes launcher is the next tallest building is around 1,000 feet. And the Archimedes launcher is 5,280 feet, or a mile. Most buildings don't surpass the 500-foot mark. The Royal Cooperative avoids metric for the Royal Standard of miles, feet and inches over kilometers, meters and centimeters. Castle Marseille functions as a royal living quarter, business, offices, city hall, hotel, university, research facility, gymnasium, warehouse, farmers market like a large-scale shopping mall. Royals and subjects mingle together on the regular. The populace keeps a strong tab on royals with their cell phones, as does the press. Making nice with the royals means you yourself can become a royal yourself by marrying one, while making nice with the subjects can keep your royal cobblestock out of prison. There's plenty of de facto regulation on either side, keeping the menagerie in the wellspring of everyone. Order and joy has become resolute by technological value. Everyone is likely to mesh as much as a classroom. There are no private schools or businesses or planes or much of anything aside from living arrangements in the Royal Cooperative. It's important to get along to avoid a violent political revolution. There are peaceful shakeups. The current King of France was the seventh in line to the throne. The people simply voted to make him king for his coaxing to the fifth cousin, whom was the previous King of France, in the area of urging for funding to the Marquis of Marseille, whom commissioned the Mach 3 locomotive and the Archimedes due to Mars. When King Reginald took office, he did so on the House of Royal Senators at the age of 32, when King Sebastian abdicated to the royal house with the long-publicized favoritism of Duke Reginald. As a duke, Reginald governed 3 counties in the south of France. There isn't much different from the royals and the subjects. Everyone is expected to utilize the same public spaces. The royals are indeed the wealthiest in the land, but that money is in part supposed to help the subjects in ways logical and obvious. Wealth hoarding is highly frowned upon when so many gears, springs, and pulleys make modern 13th century space-age life possible. It's become a game for the senators to find ways to spend money on the public good. Lawmakers have grown to enjoy philanthropy and altruism. Even the king is called senator, and he's, of course, a great takeaway from the concept. The previous king had Archimedes due and the Mach 3 built. This king has spent 7 years in office, heaving necessities on French education reforms and groundbreaking scientific research into faster trains and ships. The Champagne Hadron Collider largely discovered antimatter and subsequent containment. Archimedes' Dwa will travel twice the speed of light thanks to King Senator Reginald. The matter of fast-tracking further expenditure is up to the people, but is forethought to be a popular measure to pass from the subject representation.